I'm super excited. So without further ado, we can go ahead and get started. It's official, but it's, oh, awesome. Would you like to introduce yourself? Just let people know who you are, a little bit about yourself first before we get started with the questions.
Sabote shi naki ko shine gonse shine ni choka ande shi omari shichmeka shine ishi shan shi de soli. Hello, my name is Marcy Angeles. I am a two-spirit Apache author, musician, and journalist from southern New Mexico. I've been advocating for a long time for disabled, indigenous, trans, and two-spirit the communities that I come from.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, first of all, once again, thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here. I keep saying this because it's true. When I first started Matriarchal Voices, I had a list of women that I had in my mind that I wanted to showcase as just the kickoff to the podcast. And thank you for being here. You were definitely on that list. You were one of the top women that I had in mind. So once again, I really am appreciative of you taking your time to be here. You could be anywhere, but you're here. So I really, truly appreciate it. You are an amazing sister, an amazing person, just all around. And I wanted everybody to know just how amazing you are. So we'll jump right into it, right? So how do you balance the specific lived realities of being an Indigenous trans woman with the creative freedom of storytelling?
I love that. That's the tough question first. When I first started advocating, well, I don't know. I guess I've kind of been paving pathways for people like me for a long time. I've always been really visibly trans. I could never act like a man if I tried. I don't know how to be masculine. I know how to throw hands with a man, but I don't know how to be masculine. And so I never really had a choice. When I was little, I was kind of singled out by adults. So being a child, being told, being condemned to hell at like 8 years old, and it's like, gosh, I haven't even had a chance to understand the concept of trying to create a connection with Creator. And so things got gradually worse, well into high school, things like that. And I just figured, I was like, you know what? I don't know how to be cis heteronormative, but I know how to be myself. So you're going to have to accept me because I have no chance. I have no plans on being anyone else. And that's something I encourage all people, whether you're queer, trans, straight, or whatever, be the best you that you can be and run with it. And that's what I did. I was like, I made a space for myself. And, eventually when I started doing advocacy, learning to defend myself because of my disability rights, because I lived my life with chronic PTSD, OCD, and bipolar, as well as agoraphobia, which I know sounds like a lot, but I mean, it is a lot, but, I had to learn how to advocate for myself because a lot of people take their transphobia to work. Even if it's illegal to not discriminate, you're not supposed to discriminate. And whether or not I'm trans or not, whether or not someone's trans, I'm still disabled. On paper, I'm disabled. And your disability rights are federally protected. It's the law of the land. Federal protections is law of the land. So whether or not they like what you are or not, I'm disabled all the time. And they use that as a means to, it motivated the reason to gatekeep my needs as a disabled person. And because of that, I started speaking up. And before you know it, people started inviting me to do speaking engagements. I was doing articles. I had a private roundtable meeting with a presidential candidate in 2016 to represent Indigenous and trans people in the borderland. And so I've managed to get a lot of really cool opportunities, but most importantly, I've had the honor to serve the communities that I come from.
That's important. Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing what you, I don't want to say struggle, but what you go through every day in life. So I know that that's not easy, and you make it look easy. So thank you for sharing. I'm not sure if you want to tell the viewers about your work that you've done as far as your writing. Um,
Sure. So
I
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead because my next question was going to be about your work.
Sure. So I've written 4 books. Um, this is my baby, The Queers of the Underground. And this, like, I grew up in the rave scene. When I dropped out of high school, I took on the rave lifestyle, like 24/7. I just experienced some really deep trauma that I could have possibly not have survived. And I took on the rave lifestyle. If you don't know much about rave culture was founded by queer and trans people of color, and they built the foundation of what is rave culture. It was a space, a sanctuary for misfits. And eventually, the cishet people that didn't fit in amongst themselves, because cishet people, especially those that are colonizers or that have been colonized, have a really good way of oppressing themselves. And so they even sought a space to escape themselves. And we shared that space with them. And so I started going to raves in 2000, and I lived the lifestyle 24/7. And eventually, queer and trans people started being, well, mainly trans people started being pushed out of our local rave scene around like 2015. It happened starting a few years before that. And I wrote an essay an article for 2 really big magazines, and I was in final talks in the editorial stages with them. They were basically the equivalent of Rolling Stone, but for electronic music. And they made a call for diversity writers. But when they said diversity writers, they don't mean us. They mean people of color that will emulate whiteness. And because I was talking about colonialism, it was an inconvenient conversation. And so they left me hanging. And I'm like, you're not going to silence our communities. That is a double dare. That article is going to become a book. And so I self-published it. Nobody can filter my words because I've been doing journalism for a while. And if you don't know much about journalism, when you work for what I call colonial media, mainstream media, in the editorial process, they will make you agree to say things in your article that you didn't plan on saying. You have to accept saying some things that the editor wants to say that were not your words. And so to tell it authentically for the communities that I come from, it needed to be self-published. And so surprisingly, I've been selling more copies lately than I did when it first came out. And I've written 4 books. So the other one is Immutable Amative Ballads. It's a sci-fi love story. And like most sci-fi stories, it takes place in an apocalyptic world, a post-apocalyptic world. But one of the main points of this book was to rehumanize trans people. So the 2 most relatable things for anyone is love and heartbreak. And so I wanted to show people, because people, they perceive trans people in a bad light. They think we're just adult things. But what they don't realize is we are multifaceted beings that want love, that want to grow old and share our lives with somebody, want to get married. Most of us want to get married. And so I wanted to rehumanize us by telling a love story. And then the other 2 books, the one is called Body Manifest, which is really vulnerable, talk about mental health. And I go really in depth about what I living my life with PTSD and agoraphobia, as well as like living in a world where transphobia is so prevalent. And I feel like, how do we protect the youth? Well, we have really vulnerable conversations that, a lot of times they'll talk to people and it's really vague. Vague is just not a part of my recipe. The whole point is preventative care. I don't want the youth, us older trans, us trans that are managed to make it past, 35. And if most of you don't know, the life expectancy of a trans person of color is 35 years old. Wow. I'm going to be 41. So I am nearly 6 years past what I'm expected to live. And so for us, our elders come early. You're an elder when you're like 35 as a trans person. And so it's a preventative care. Us not wanting the trans youth, because people don't realize trans children exist. I was a trans kid. There's a lot of trans kids. They do not need to grow up to have PTSD. They do not need to grow up to have agoraphobia. Everyone, every freaking person, trans or not, deserves to live a good quality of life, to be able to go to the store, be able to use a bathroom, because that's a human right to use the bathroom. And to be able to be seen. And that's the thing, they don't want us to be seen in public. It's more than just sports and bathroom. They don't want to see us. And they talk about what is normal. This is what is normal. Everything is normal. Whether you're thin, you're voluptuous, short, tall, you have all of your limbs, you have two of your limbs, you're in a wheelchair, you're able-bodied, you're not able-bodied. Everything is normal. Public means diversity. Public means everyone. We're all normal. And they just need to understand trans people are normal, and we deserve to have a fighting chance to be happy also.
That was beautiful. Thank you. So my next question, like I said, was towards your work and your writing, and many Indigenous authors connect connect the body like to land. So how does your writing process explore the connection between your body, your gender transition, or like ancestral lands? Is there a way that you go about it?
I love that. That is such a good question. So when I first officially came out as trans was 2000 and I guess around 2000. Let's see. I'm really old, so let's see. When I was
You're
19,
not.
I started going by androgyne, right? Which was, I guess, what you would call non-binary before I even heard of the word non-binary. And because I was trying to understand myself, I was always been a feminine being, and before that, I didn't think of myself as a boy, and I wasn't sure if gender was important, enough to me. I just knew I was a feminine being until one day I realized, no, it is important. I am a woman. I am both a trans woman. I am a woman and I'm two-spirited. I embrace this masculine energy that lives inside of me. It is very much a part of me. But when I came out, being around being around white T trans women, I started to experience imposter syndrome. And they would call me a boy. And they would shame me. Any guy that talked to me, they shamed for talking to me because I am two-spirit. And I didn't have the word then. So I started decolonizing and re-indigenizing about 2007, 2008. And the more that I learned about our culture as Apache people and our traditional roles, and, I started to make sense for once in my life. Because up until that point, I hated myself. I did not want to continue. And there's many times I tried to escape this world. And so I just celebrated 19 years of sobriety this week. No, last week. Well, I don't remember. The other day, I celebrated 19 years. But, I realized part of the reason a lot of trans people are addicts, first of all, traumatized people make excellent addicts. That's the same reason a lot of Indigenous people are addicts. But we're taught that we're not loved by the colonizers, that we're something to hate. We're supposed to hate what we see in the mirror. But in most, we're not a monolith, but in most tribal cultures, in my culture, I learned to fall in love with myself. And I have a long way to go, but I understand that I am sacred. We are sacred. Everyone is sacred. Everyone has a purpose. So that is something I have begun to apply to my work, because I don't need to be trans by their standards. I'm two-spirit. She Indian Ishtishan. I am two-spirit. I am an Apache two-spirit. And honestly, I would go as far as to say I'm Apache before I'm anything else. I'm Apache before I'm even two-spirit. That is how important being Apache is to me. But so there's that. A few years ago, I was invited to do a colloquium, a conference, a nightlife conference, and I talked about nightlife in relationship to sacred land. So things I've been addressing for many years is like music festivals that will erect a teepee. If you don't fill a baptismal tub with fun, happy juice, why do you do that to our teepees? That is for ceremony. That is sacred. And I also started talking about, you have music festivals in nature Are you taking the time to clean up afterwards? Are you leaving trash behind? Because we need to take care of That's Mother Earth. Everyone needs the same planet, whether you're native or not. Everyone needs the same planet to survive, and that's a problem with a lot of non-natives, in particular white tea people. They haven't started their healing journey, so they're completely destructive all the time. They don't love the earth because they haven't learned how to love themselves to their full capacity, and they have stuff that they can learn from native people. And so I've just talked about it in different ways. I've talked about transness from the native scope, from the Apache experience. Being Two Spirit, I was interviewed for a book a few years ago, well, actually, like almost 10 years ago, called Reclaiming Two Spirit, which I don't recommend because the person that wrote the book, he guilted me for saying that me and the other Two Spirit should be compensated for our stories in our time. It was a white tea person. He was a professor from Virginia. He never paid us. He was like, "How dare you?" And it's probably the one Two Spirit book that comes out the most when people are looking for material. So there is a book that I would recommend. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but if you're curious, there's a book I could recommend that came out like I think in the 90s. If you're curious, but sorry if I went off on a tangent.
No, no, you're good. Yes, if you can remember, just let me know, and I'll share with the viewers. So actually, what you're talking about is beautiful because it actually naturally just leads into my next question. And my next question is, how do you push against traditional Western literary structures that enforce binary both in terms of narrative structure and language?
That's a good question. Um, I think I'm really punk rock by nature, and I think Apaches are really punk rock by nature. You can't get us to settle down. We have a very rebellious spirit, and it's a beautiful rebellion. And so it's my body and my Apache spirit will never let me be in a box. I cannot do that for them. So I don't know how to even meet their requirements to do that. Other things I do, I think everyone should encourage also non-natives to re-indigenize and to decolonize because all of us are indigenous to somewhere, right? And we all need the same planet to survive. Everyone came from an earth religion at some point. And so, there's a whole thing about the Latinx word. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, if you're an indigenous person, you're Two Spirit. You're not Latinx. And, I'm not going to police people's identity, but that's what you are. If you want to re-indigenize, you're Two Spirit. You're not Latinx. And then, obviously, whatever term your tribe has for you. But Latinx, I think, is an excellent opportunity for actual Latin people that truly are Spaniard to disrupt YT supremacy. I want to see YT people make space for themselves in their own oppressive cultures. When we teach them to decolonize, when we teach them to be curious about who their ancestors were, it helps everyone in the long run. And obviously, you don't have to do that. They ask us for enough labor as it is. But should you want to, if you want to have a diverse circle, encourage them to explore their ancestry, to explore the pagan roots of their ancestors and make rooms for themselves, because it's not just Native people that have had multiple genders since the beginning of time. Many, many cultures all over the world, you look at the East Indians, they have the Hydras. And so they have a third gender. There was the Celtics, they had found traditional burial grounds where there was trans women that were buried the same direction as cis women. And so I think encouraging people to do that, and don't ever let them put you in a box. Even if you're not trans, never, ever let a YT person tell you who you are, ever. No YT person ever has my consent to tell me who I am. I know who I am. My ancestors tell me who I am, just like you all know who you are. And we have to, every day, we have to do whatever we can to fight, to maintain and preserve our identity as Indigenous people, not for ourselves, but because we're healing our ancestors and we heal our future generations to ensure the survival of our people.
Absolutely. Whew. Um, I love how everything is just like flowing into the next question so naturally. So I'll ask this last question, then I'll pull somebody up from the viewers to ask a question. So my next question is, who is the primary audience you imagine when you're writing, and how does that affect the vulnerability and the themes that you choose to share?
I don't know. There's so many different communities that I write for, but there's a few. I think of disabled people, disabled indigenous people that don't always get a voice. I talk a lot about disability rights, but that's because I'm my disabilities are in my mind. They're non-visible disabilities, the PTSD and agoraphobia.
Mm.
But there are people, like one of my closest friends. I think that there's two times I realized the importance of talking for disabled people. I have an aunt who walked on in 2015. She lived her life with paranoid schizophrenia, and she was one of the worst cases in the area. And seeing the way that some of my cousins would provoke her to say things that were embarrassing so they could laugh at her would infuriate me. My blood was on fire. My red fluid was on fire. I could not believe that they could do this to a person, much less to a relative.
Mm.
And then in high school, I had this beautiful friend of mine. We're still friends. She has cerebral palsy, and we would help her walk, and people would laugh at her. And I couldn't believe that people would laugh at somebody that was less fortunate, that was not able bodied, who was all of this against their will, without a choice. And so the whole point is you speak and yell, even if your voice is shaky. Because in my culture, you always do the right thing. And so I'm a privileged person, even with all my disabilities. I'm able to talk, I'm able to articulate, and I have a family that's accepting of me as a two-spirit and trans person. I know a lot of trans people that don't have family, that spend their holidays online on Christmas. They're online, with each other. They don't have family to turn to. I have family that will accept me even if I'm out there advocating. So with that comes a responsibility. I owe it to those that cannot. And I think if you're a person that can, you need to do it for those that cannot. That is the native way.
Mm. Wow. Um, since the time that I've known you, you've always now it's making sense because you've always told me how important community is, or at least to have that circle that supports you. So that makes a lot of sense. I want to pull up somebody from the audience to come up and ask you a question if that's okay. Let me see. Let me see. Hopefully she can come if she's not too shy because she don't often come on panels, but um, hopefully. I see you, Deuce. I got you in next, sis. I promise. Just stay in the queue. um, Hold on. Let me see what she says. Okay, we'll go with Deuce real quick. Here we go.
Oh,
Hello, welcome in.
good evening, everybody.
Dapat prima.
My question was for Beans, who I love so much. Um, I know you've written a few books. Which is your favorite book and why?
That's tough. Can I pick two? Um,
Okay, yeah, your first one and second.
okay. So my first would be The Queers of the Underground. Because a lot of people don't know this. I was the first trans DJ in the El Paso area.
Wow.
And when I started DJing was 2008. I'd already been going to rave since 2000. And a lot of the cis heteronormative DJs, a lot of queer and trans or not, excuse me, a lot of queer people also from the rave scene started making fun of trans people. And so when I started DJing, they treated it like, oh, well, now anyone can DJ. It's so cliche. The trans are DJing now, and now it's cliche. I got a lot of pushback. And I said, you're not going to set limitations on me. You're not going to set limitations on trans people. You don't get to do that, especially if you don't know the history that queer and trans people helped build the foundation of rave culture. You have no business raving. Rave culture is inherently political. It's inherently anti-capitalist. It is inherently like pro-human. It was about building communities. There's a creed called PLUR: peace, love, unity, respect. And what many found scary about the trans scene is that there was people from different racial backgrounds, cultures, social classes, gay, straight. Everyone wasn't just friends. We were family. And that was really scary to them. And they actually started to make raves illegal. I don't think it was over keeping the kids safe. They don't want any of us to create community, because when you create community with different people and you realize how capitalism affects all of us and how colonialism affects all of us, then the people, they come together and we rise, and they don't want that. And so there's a lot of stuff about rave culture that is, as a movement, politically, is worth exploring. And so I didn't let them hold me down. And so what I did is I threw them under the bus. I called them all out. And now, all these years later, there's a bunch of trans DJs that are able to DJ in the El Paso area. And they're invited to play at events, they're hired, and they're able to do all of that without the backlash that they gave me. And, you know, I pat myself on the back because it was hard. But to know that that was the outcome, that's where it's at. And I'm not the first trans. There's many trans DJs that came before me, many trans producers that came before me. You know, I just got to be that person in this area. And so it was important to tell this story. And I also interviewed different nightlife promoters, DJs, record label owners and stuff in this book that experienced the same thing in their rave scenes globally. And then the other book is Immutable Amative Ballads, which is the sci-fi love story, and that's just to show people that it isn't trans people just we get our hearts broken, we fall in love, we want to love, and that is what we all share together. We are human beings, you know. Everyone just wants to be in love and happy, and I think it's to make it more simplistic. So, those two.
I love that. I love, like you said, that you like rehumanize what it is to be trans. That's beautiful. Just because like the Western narrative, like you said, is to not to see them as people. And I feel like your work has, like, you really poured yourself into your work, and it's really beautiful. If somebody knows, or I think Deuce, you know the titles. I know one title, but if you know all the titles of Sisters books, can you guys please put them in the comments?
Yeah,
Thank you so much for coming.
This is the one I own. Everyone should get it. My second question and last question is, where can you get your book, and where are the different places you can get your books? Yeah.
Sure. So you can order. I mean, I have a link tree. You can get them from Barnes and Noble or Amazon. You know, Barnes and Noble is both USA and Canada, and then Amazon it's available globally. Or if you want to help a sister out, you know, you can order them from me directly. And so right now I actually have to up out because I almost sold out of this last shipment. My books have been selling really quickly lately. So I'm very grateful for that. So, you know, I actually make more profit if you order from me directly.
Awesome. Thank you for coming up, Bruce. My next person that I have up here is Micha. Micha, thank you for coming up. Would you be so kind as to ask our sister a question, whatever question you have?
Hi, I love you so much, Fethra. I know that you've helped me so much in my journey through reconnection, more than you will ever understand or know. So I really appreciate you through the screen. Um, as a member of the LGBTQIA plus community as well, who is still figuring out her own um, sexualities and her own understanding of why she might be a little, masculine. To us who are kind of, I'm not trying to say that I'm trans, right? But I'm not. But I do, the older that I get, the more that I do some internalized work, the more that I realize and recognize that I am a little bit masculine as well. And so I guess, how would you, or have you in your art, or how have you in your art balanced both of your spirits to give them both a light and a voice?
I love that. Um, First of all, I love you also. I love all of you, and you all have helped me immensely. You have no idea. And I look forward to sharing community with you and, you know, Gina, Nisi, Micha, Duse, Ahsoka, um, Saji, Daisy, Bear, Mexley, everyone. You keep me going. Community is important too, likewise. The balance. I think a lot of my music, like I have some music that's pretty angry, and people are like, you are angry. I'm like, you sound angry. I'm like, I am angry. I'm all these things. I'm happy. I'm sad. Native people have every right to be angry, considering what they've done to us and what they're still currently doing to us. And so I don't want to say that anger is a masculine energy, but I'm a tough cookie. I'm all these things. But I think a lot of that is in my music. There's very soft, and then there's very rough, and like very like a lot of noise and angsty, and I think there's just a complete balance in my music. Those two spirits. And recently, actually, before I wanted to mention this, a few years ago, not a few years ago, it was about 10 years ago, the local LGBT center, um, I had reached out to them for help. It was founded by a YT non-binary person, but they're she, they. And she told me that colonization ended a long time ago and to get over it already. And so over the years, I lost queer and trans community in El Paso and New Mexico, this borderland area, minus one with two friends that would check in on me. But as far as help, organizational help, I was on my own. And I started doing all this other work. I ended up becoming more respected nationally than I am locally because I was politically involved, but I'm super duper about indigenous and two-spirit rights. They're not separate from it. They're the same thing. The majority of tribes have had multiple genders since the beginning of time. YT colonizers forced the gender binary on us. So not obviously we're not a monolith, but if you want to decolonize and your brand of decolonizing does not explore how many genders your tribe has, and if you're not showing it, because Native Lives Matter means no Native gets left behind. That means you need to stand up for each other, whether you're cis, whether you're trans, whether you're straight, whether you're gay, you're bi, whether you're able-bodied or disabled. No one gets left behind. And so I called her out. And a lot of the other people locally, other LGBT advocates, they made me the problem. And I became a bad taste in the mouth of the cishet advocates as well as the LGBT advocates. It was very isolating. But last weekend, the strangest thing happened. I went to an art market, and some of the people that came to ask questions and get a book, they asked me what I thought about that place, the organization, and I explained to them my experience. And I said, I've seen this center, this LGBT organization, call out people and demand an apology. I don't want to be, I'm not asking for financial reparations, but you owe me and the other two spirits and Native people an apology. There are plenty of queer and trans and two-spirit people that are Indigenous. And whether you're queer or trans, those words, colonization ended a long time ago and get over it already, doesn't just hurt two-spirit people. That hurts all Native people. Mm-hmm. And then they explained to me, they've taken over. They let that woman go from the organization, and they're undoing the harm that she had done over the years. She had done something similar to a Black lesbian in the area, was very insensitive and racist towards her. And that was one of the main reasons that she got pushed out. So they apologized to us. We got an apology. And now they're in talks about wanting to collaborate in the future, whether I go and talk with them and teach them about two-spirit people, and maybe people want to decolonize or things like that. I'm sorry if I didn't answer your question, but basically I balance that in my music, my writing, and journalism. It's all mixed in there. I don't know how to not be both, if that makes sense. My two energies as masculine and feminine have learned to work together so well. Sometimes I have trouble figuring out which is the one that's doing things.
You know what's insane, Mama? I feel like in the way that you were explaining your form of activism, I can listen, to the in-betweens of your words and hear both of your spirits speaking for you. So yes, you beautifully answered my question. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we have come to a little bit over half of the interview. Thank you once again for being here, and thank you for everybody who is in here. How are you feeling? You feeling good? You're doing excellent. You're a pro at this. I can tell this is not your first time. This is. I was more nervous, and I was just like, oh, she's so special to me. So, my next question would be more on advocacy and community, and how do you navigate advocating for two-spirit and trans liberation within Indigenous communities while also challenging colonial structures and white-dominated queer spaces? I think you touched on that a little bit. You touched on that in your last, but if you have anything more you want to add.
Sure. So, my work has been covered in 4 college dissertations, including by one that was a Grammy winner in New York. So I'm currently signed to a record label called Exude Records in Berlin. I released an album on them through them in February. This is the second label I'm signed to. The first label I was signed to was Voluminous Arts in New York. And it was founded by Reina Ressam, Gavlan Reina Ressam, who is the former synth player for the band LCD Sound System. And so if you're not familiar with their work, they've headlined Coachella, they've played Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, been in soundtracks. If you like indie rock, they're one of the biggest indie rock bands that there is. And when she left the band to explore her own work, she started a label as the 4th artist that was signed to her label, and I was the only two-spirit artist that was signed to her label. As far as I forgot what I was talking about. So there's that. There was a point I was going to make. What was the question again? I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. How do you navigate advocating for two-spirit and trans liberation within Indigenous communities while also challenging colonial structures in white-dominated queer spaces?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is making space. And because the genres I work in are I make ethereal, electroacoustic folk, I make post-punk, noise rock, I do house, I do techno, industrial. I make all of these genres. But these are often scenes that you do not hear Indigenous issues in, right? So I think it's really easy for us to be only want to the safety of the echo chambers that we're used to being in, which is important to maintain those spaces, to rejuvenate ourselves. But it's important to take the messages of decolonization, re-indigenization to other spaces that are not a safe space. Mm-hmm. And I like quite a few other Native people have brought this conversation to spaces that needed them. And then again, I did that here locally with the local LGBT scene, because I know that the majority of people here are like they're LGBT, but they're part of Latinidad. And there's nothing wrong with Latinidad. There's nothing wrong with Spanish, because if we can make space for natives to talk English, we can make space for natives to talk Spanish. That's not the issue. It's if you're a brown person, like, you deserve to know who your ancestors are. And not all brown people are Native, obviously, but if you're a Native person, whether you're colonized or not, you deserve to uncover who you are and get as close to that as possible. And I know Micha said earlier about how I've shown up for y'all. That's why I'm so overprotective about reconnecting Natives. And I know those that I surround myself with are doing it the right way. And you all are doing the hard work. And, I think decolonization means nobody gets left behind. If somebody's decolonization means only them and their family, that's not decolonization. That's self-preservation. Mm-hmm. Decolonization means every Native is supported. No Native gets left behind. Whether or not their tribe is even, because there's tons of tribes that are not recognized, state or federally, just within the confines of USA or Mexico, Brazil, any of these places. So it's important to make sure that we make space for all Native people to survive. And as far as, being that disruptor, I think that's just a responsibility as a two-spirit person. There's many people that are leading the fronts of decolonization and saving Native people. The cis women are leading. Everyone is sacred. We love cis women because they are the only beings that have a portal in their body that can bring a spirit from the spirit realm into the physical realm, as well as trans men also have that also. So just those that can bear children. Mm-hmm. Men are sacred because there are protectors, and not that Native people are incapable not that Native women are incapable of protecting themselves. Because if you know Native women, sometimes you should be more scared of us than the men. But Native men protect the vulnerable, the elderly, the youth, the two spirits, the disabled. That's what a warrior does. A warrior is not a bully. A warrior is a protector. YT people, they have stolen that warrior terminology from us, and they rebranded it as someone that is a bully. Warriors do not bully. Cowards bully. Cowards bully people that are defenseless compared to them. A warrior is a protector, whether it's of the earth or the communities. And so it's everyone needs to be that disruptor when you're a two-spirit person, when you're a Native person, because it's the only way that we survive. Because they talk about us as if we're not here, but they also stomp on our voice and try to keep us silent. But we cannot be silent, especially what's going on right now. Colonization, what that woman said was so ignorant and so colonial. Colonization did not end. What they're talking about, the racial profiling, what these camps, that is colonization. That is ongoing.
That's powerful. I almost forget that I'm interviewing. I just listen. I just want to sit back and listen. So thank you. That last question and this next question kind of flow into each other. And this is more so like community healing. As someone who does visible advocacy work, how do you focus on joy, love, and resilience alongside the necessary discussions about survival and colonial violence?
Everything I do for work is also like stuff I do for therapy. So when I'm hurting, I write, and I'll be writing in tears. But by the time I'm done, I'm smiling because I know I'm helping people and I'm helping myself. And same thing with music. If you're angry, don't suppress it. Feel it. Do something that is expressive. Get it out. Turn it into something. Just because it's a negative emotion doesn't mean that the outcome is bad when you express it. You can transmute that into something good. And if it sounds angry, well, they need to hear us angry because a lot of YT people and non-natives, they want to strip us of our humanity and our human emotions. No, we are not just beads, and we're not just dream catchers, and we're not just powwows. We are multifaceted beings, human beings, with an array of human emotions that are G-side survivors of the largest G-side to ever occur, and it's an inconvenient conversation for them to have. They don't get to not feel like the superheroes that they paint themselves out to be. If they acknowledge that the majority of them, their ancestors, are the reason that many of ours did not get to still be here. And so we need to be able to do whatever we can to just ensure that our people survive. That's all it is. And when we see these people doing this back and forth thing, it is counterproductive. Yeah. Do not invite me to a life. Don't invite anyone to a life if you're going to talk about personal issues. Don't take that to lives. That is just, it's not productive. You want to argue? Fine. Do it in DMs. Don't make yourselves a spectacle. You know, and I've seen the harm that has been said about the community that you all are, that I'm lucky to be a part of. Like, we'll mention voting. Voting is a responsibility. I'm not a Democrat. I will never trust the Republican Party. The Republican Party cannot be trusted, especially if you're a person of color, especially if you're Indigenous. But right now, I think, because when I had a private roundtable meeting with Jill Stein in 2016, at the time, you know, there was Standing Rock, and Democratic voters as well as Republican voters both hated trans people. They were both making fun of us. It was desperate. It was desperate times. And what I learned in that time is that I don't trust any political party, not even the Green Party. Especially this last election, I had reached out to them, and the woman that runs the New Mexico, she's in charge of the New Mexico chapter of the Green Party. She also said that it wasn't important to talk about Indigenous issues because colonization ended a long time ago. I'm like, you're living in a state. You're in charge of a chapter in a state that has, I believe, the highest population of Native people. And you're going to say that. Any person that is not Native, that is running for office on Native land, if you cannot include Native people in your conversation, you know, the caucasity, realize the land you're on. You know, and so I think right now our only chance to buy us some time is voting Democrat. Do I trust Democrats? No. Will you hurt my feelings if you talk bad about Democrats? No, you won't. I am critical of all Democrats, including Native Democrats. I don't care if they're Native. If you're not fully helping us, just the image of a Native person isn't enough. But right now, if you really want to stand up against what is going on, because this administration is not safe for us. Why is it not safe? As a journalist, I have never seen people's ability to do journalism, and you're supposed to be able to have a dissenting voice. You have freedom of speech. If journalists cannot write freely, and they cannot do honest journalism, you got a problem. And same thing when we look at due process, that these brown people are picked up, taken away without due process, that's a federal protection. There are things that Democrats are horrible, but there are some good things that they do. And right now, I do think that they're our only fighting chance to buy some time. I do not trust third parties anymore. I know I was with a third party for a long time. You don't have to follow that. You know, obviously, it's your vote, your choice. But I think that a lot of third parties are only concerned about making themselves happening. There's megalomaniacs in every single political party. People want to run stuff. But I think right now, the importance of buying ourselves time, and afterwards, it doesn't end there. Then when the Democrats win, hold them accountable. Call them out. What's going on with MMIW? What are you doing for MMIW? Are you helping disabled Native people? What are you, are your immigration, deportation numbers high? Are you acknowledging the indigeneity of these people? Because what they call a lot of people that are immigrants are not immigrants. They're indigenous people. Native people have been migrating since the beginning of time. That is the most normal thing for us. And considering what these colonial occupations have done, some migrate from these other colonial occupations that are south of the border because they have to, because of capitalism, because of colonialism, for many different reasons. So these are things that we need to take into consideration, whatever you choose to do, but I think it is essential to vote blue, not because we trust them, but because they might be our only chance to buy some time. And that's the thing. The Democratic Party may not know it, but they need progressives. They need leftists to pull in votes because they cannot do it by just the party loyalists. The thing is with Republicans, they all vote for a different reason. They vote out of hatred. They know what they're voting for. The difference is on the left, we are intelligent. We're smart. We question things. And because of that, in a perfect world, we got an honest candidate. Do I think that'll happen? I think anyone that runs for political office probably just is an honest person, to be honest. That is just my own opinion. But I think for the sake of, weigh out your options, weigh pros and cons. Look what happened. Look, this guy should have never been in office again. Right. And so anything to save brown, black lives, people of color, just people in general. This affects white tea people too. Mm-hmm. I think it was Russell Means that said it. Like now white tea people are starting to understand what it feels like to live on a reservation.
Absolutely. You answered that beautifully. Thank you. So I have the last two questions for the interview. And it's more on like boundaries and respect. What is a common question or expectation you face from cisgender settler allies that you feel places undue educational labor on you?
You mean like to educate?
Mm-hmm.
I think that they expect it without wanting to compensate me for my time. And it's the same thing for any person, not just myself. And that was the issue I had with that book I was interviewed for. I didn't say pay me and not the other two spirits. I said you need to pay all of us. And that's the thing. There needs to be more Native filmmakers, Native publishers, Native musicians, Native chefs, Native everything, Native attorneys, everywhere. We need to be everywhere. Because YT people think everything about us belongs to them. Every time you meet YT people, a lot, well, not every time, but most of the time, they always talk, I know a Native person, and then they mention what they got off of them. When do you mention what you gave to them? Do you give any kind of reparations? Do you give words of encouragement? We're more than just a resource. They have more than depleted us of resources. And even when it comes to protecting water, we're not just protecting Native water. We're protecting drinking water for everyone. Non-Natives think that they are entitled to things from us. Compensate Native people. Not just me, all Native people. You want our education? You better pay for it. You want those earrings? You better pay them for them. You want a Native person's music? Buy it. You want a book? Buy it. We don't owe you anything for free. If anything, they owe us 1,000,000 lifetimes over for what they have done to us. We should be compensated for our time, for our work, for our ability to educate. And especially, these are not all things that you learn in school. Because in school is where there is indoctrination. A lot of things that Native teach is from experiencing the hardships of life and colonialism. And those are things that we've learned through our suffering that we'll never learn in a university or a high school. And it's important. It's important to understand everyone's also lived experience. There needs to be space for res natives. There needs to be space for barrio natives. We have much overlap in the ways we were colonized, but there's also different ways in which we were not colonized. And there needs to be unity between the South and Left tribes. There also needs to be unity between the barrio natives and the res natives. Everyone needs to make that space. Because politically, if all Native people were to decolonize and work together, whether you're recognized or not, oh boy, could we change elections. Oh boy, could we create change.
Wow. Sorry, I was like, I'm telling you, I can keep listening to you. Now this is more so about safe spaces. What does genuine allyship and support look like to you when non-Indigenous people interact with your work or ask you to speak?
Having an open mind. Making room for me and those like me to have the array of human emotions, and unlearning the ways that they were taught to talk about us and to us. Lots of non-natives, and not just white people, just non-natives in general. It's not just white people that do this. Whether it's through colonization or whatever, will talk about us or to us in a way that is not okay. It is normalized to talk down to us, to talk at us, or to tokenize us. I'm not your token. They are not your tokens. We are not your tokens. And if you want to create community with Native people, you have to earn our trust. We are very traumatized people. We are very traumatized genocide survivors. If you intend to cause us harm, stay away. If you cannot treat us respectfully, stay away. But if you can just manage to be curious enough to be like, how can I show it better for all Native people? And also that another thing is comedians. There's a lot of comedians that are very transphobic, and people will defend them to the end of the day. But any person, whether they're white or a person of color that is non-Native, or if they're Native, and they're making transphobic jokes, they're upholding colonialism, because the majority of tribes have had multiple genders since the beginning of time. So when you are defending the transphobia of an entertainer, whether they're a musician, whether they're a comedian or whatever, you're defending colonialism. And Native lives matter. Black lives matter. There are Black, queer, and trans people, and I don't speak on their behalf, but they deserve to not be left behind. There are Native trans, and queer people that deserve to not be left behind. And for every other community, don't leave anyone behind. You need to watch out for your whole community as a whole and understand the complexities of intersectionality. Different people are in different intersections. Some are Native and trans. Some are Native and disabled. Some are Native and cis women. Some are Native and men. Men's mental health matters. The patriarchy and transphobia and homophobia, that affects Native men's mental health, because they are taught that they're not allowed to have an array of emotions. So we just need to show up for each other. And non-Native people, if they want to create community with us, they have to earn our trust and start to treat us in a humane way. And it starts there.
Thank you for that. So I forgot one question, and if you don't mind, I also don't want to take up your time, because I know you're stepping out. This is more so like reclaiming narratives. Western views often sensationalize or misunderstand the traditional roles of trans and two-spirit people in Indigenous cultures. How do you use your platform to reclaim and educate on these inherent histories and just kind of like fix the Western narrative that is out there, or try to um I guess, yeah, like fix it, or like how do you try to educate people on that?
Yeah, well, one thing is teaching them that you cannot be two spirit if you're not native.
Mm.
You can be an ally, you can be non-binary. Maybe there's a word for that in your culture. So that's a form of harm that can be done by other queer and trans people that are non-native. If you're not native, you're not two spirit. Sorry, end of story.
Mm.
You know, you perpetuate harm by when you steal something that belongs to us. There's also a thing where they push this whole idea that the term two spirit, the whole two spirit thing started in the 90s. So I'll explain that. In the 1990s, there was a movement in Canada where they came up with the word two spirit to describe a phenomenon and something that is sacred for many tribal cultures, from the top of North America, bottom of South America, all of Central America, that most of us tribes had two spirit people, but we had a word in our own language since the beginning of time. The term itself, two spirit, is a blanket term that came up in the 1990s to describe that many tribes had multiple genders with our own words since the beginning of time. Two spirit did not start in 1990s. The English term to describe something that has existed since the beginning of time for most native tribes, was in the 1990s. So that's one thing to set the record straight. Also to share being two spirit is more than just a label. It's a responsibility. We have roles. So what do most two spirits do in most tribes? We are healers. We are medicine people. We're people that a man and woman could go to if they're having, relationship problems. We see from both perspectives. Our job as two spirit people is to create a bridge. Other things that we do, we've taken roles in naming ceremonies. And for Apaches, for my band and for quite a few other ones, you cannot have proper ceremony without a two spirit present. We have, and I won't give too much detail, but in order to keep bad spirits away, you need a presence of all genders, man and woman. But two spirit carry that balance within ourselves, so we keep away bad spirits all on our own. And so those are just some of the things that we are known to do. Also, some two spirits would adopt orphans, children that ended up orphans, their parents unalived for whatever reason. Two spirits would take them in. So, it takes a village. That's just the native way. It takes a village to take care of the elderly, to take care of each other. But we played vital roles just like everyone else did in our communities.
You just make everything make sense. I know you and I had a discussion, and you know that I'm coming back to my people. So I was even kind of like, can I even say that I'm two spirit, even though I am queer? I am part of the LGBTQIA plus community. And you told me, like, no, you are. And, just listening to everything that you're saying, it makes sense. Even just like as a small girl, I just, there was just something in me. I knew that I had like this very masculine side of me. I would even have like little boys like that I had crushes on. They would tell me, it's you're very pretty. It's just because you're too like tomboy. And like I'd be like, okay, whatever. Like you're just you can't handle. I'm just a badass. But I'm really coming to terms with a lot of it because it makes sense. Like I also appreciate, and I wanted you to kind of touch on. I know this is random. Not all trans people are two spirit people, or not all LGBTQIA plus people are two spirited people, because there's that kind of common notion with just people who don't know the intricacies of it.
Great question. I love that you asked that. So that's why I explained that I'm two spirit and trans, because those are okay. So how do I put this? two-spirit, like there's also straight people that are two-spirit. You know, it's just you have those two energies, like, and they're like, people have asked, like, how do you describe two-spirit? And I always use the example, like, you ever seen those drivers that have cars that have two drivers, two steering wheels? That, but a person. You know, it's two drivers, one car, and they exist as one person. So there are straight two-spirit people, and there are many there are many indigenous queer people that do not have two spirits. They have one, and so they're gay. And same thing with trans people, like especially like from the European scope. Trans people, like it's kind of a little bit more. Well, trans is an umbrella, but typically trans can be very binary. You know, people identify as a man or a woman, and then there's non-binary people, which I love non-binary people. But you know, so it's people get to describe to the smallest, like reduce it to this as close to the center of who they are. But it's not necessarily just an LGBT thing to be two-spirit. It's just to have the masculine, feminine spirit inside you that drive you, and then. And it's the same thing with trans people. It's funny, like that aside, a lot of people assume just because somebody is trans that they like men. I think most of the trans I know are attracted to other women and other trans women. I am for, well, okay, I won't say that on here. I like men. You knew where I was going with that.
Yeah.
I like men. But not all trans like men, and then there's trans men that exist. You know, not all trans men like women. Some trans men like other trans men or other men, and so I think people need to understand gender and schmexuality are two very different things. You know, one's identity, the other one is your space of attraction to other beings outside of yourself, or even yourself. Hey, if you're a freak, let your freak flag fly. You know, whatever. But I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you. We have a comment that I thought was pretty interesting. It says, I feel like even two-spirit is limiting because I feel like we can contain even more than two, but I'm just learning.
Okay. You know, for every tribe, things are very different, and it's so important in the work that I do. You know, I make sure to acknowledge that a lot of different tribes live in and around each other. So we can have the name of our homelands, but it doesn't mean other tribes don't live there and don't have their names for their own homelands that just so happen to be a part, you know, overlap with ours. It's, you know, we need to make space for each other. Mm-hmm. And every tribe does something different. You know, for us Apaches, we have 5 genders. And so that's, you know, I never want to talk on behalf of all Native people or all Two-Spirit. There's more than enough room for all of us to talk on behalf of our people and ourselves. And that's the importance. It's to show other Two-Spirit people that we all can have a voice. It's not just about my voice or their voice. There's space for everyone to talk. Mm-hmm. Everyone deserves to talk.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. That's the conclusion of our interview. And once again, I super appreciate you being here and being a part of Envy Podcast. I had to breathe because I was just like, I needed people to understand how special you are to me, and I wanted to showcase that. And you truly are, even just in my personal life. I've told you this before, you're my angel. So I don't know where I would be without you. I really appreciate you being here and taking the time out of your day to be here. You look absolutely beautiful. I hope that you have a lot of fun tonight. Have some fun for me. I'm going to be stuffing my face watching movies with the kids. So thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm going to, just to conclude the episode, I don't know if you have any final words, and then I'll drop you down and then I'll end the live.
Geez. I guess my last final words is support Native artists, whether they're beadwork, Support their podcast. Love Gina. Gina for President 2028. I stand behind that. I want you to run someday. Support other Native podcasts. Support Native filmmakers. Support Native, authors, journalists. We need to support each other. I mean, if you can support me, wonderful. But there's tons of other Native authors that are not me that also need your support. Tons of other Native musicians that also need your support. And that's one thing I will say about the music industry. They don't make a lot of space for Native musicians. So when you see a Native musician out there that is working really hard, you need to understand that there are white tea music scenes that do not want to include them. Whether it's me or them, if you're able to get their album, or if you can't afford it, it doesn't always have to be monetary. There are ways to support. Share that article.
Mm-hmm.
Give a like. Share that podcast. There are so many ways to support if you do not have money. Words of encouragement. Your music means so much. Your writing means so much. Your podcast means so much. You look like you're a good cook. There are so many things that are not monetary. There's so many different ways to support each other. So just make sure that everyone is supporting each other, because it's tough being Native. You have to be, all of us are tough. You'll never meet a Native person that is not a tough cookie. But just because you can carry it doesn't mean it isn't heavy. And we need to remember everyone has their own story, their own lived experience, so support each other.
Thank you for being here. I'm gonna drop you down because I usually just end the live so that I can upload it. So thank you for being here. I love you, sis, and have an amazing time tonight, okay?